We gather here to dedicate the Carolina Alumni Memorial in memory of those lost in military service. They number 787 noble spirits whose names are inscribed in the memorial book that graces this place. Like the Chancellor, I too thank Bob Eves for the conception of such a memorial gathered while he was standing at historic Normandy. He and Sherwood and Charles, as the Chancellor has said, and many more alumni, applied their considerable talents, their resources, to this project, and Maggie Smith was commissioned to do the design. We gather now in solemn dedication of this completed effort, lovingly done, and with profound gratitude. And this memorial fittingly sits in the heart of the campus of this great old university, whose sons and daughters, especially in recent years, have been involved in every struggle when and where freedom has been challenged in our world. Few institutions have sent so many into armed conflict in the defense of liberty, and few institutions have served this nation so faithfully and so well. One day during the early 1930s, my father took time to share with me his uniform of World War I. He also brought out some faded photographs, and he gave me some heartfelt recollections of those hectic days in Army camp in those years, and the rain and the mud and the drill. He said his generation was told they were fighting the war to end all wars, and they were fighting to make the world safe for democracy. And he especially remembered his fellow soldiers, some of whom were his high school contemporaries, and the neighbors' children. In those days, few young men had the opportunity to attend college. Less than 2 decades later, that same dad had his 4 sons standing before him, showing him their uniforms. We too were fighting the war to end all wars, and we were stationed at all corners of the globe in that conflict. And it was my class of 1941 that literally marched off the collegiate graduation platform into a global conflagration. First, it was the sands of North Africa, then the Mediterranean, then the beaches of Normandy and Central Europe, and then across the Pacific to Iwo Jima, Guadalcanal, and finally the main deck of the battleship Missouri, where it all ended. It was total mobilization. Willie and Joe, and Rosie too. The unity of spirit in this country and the great dedication of effort made that victory certain. Like my father, I too remembered my classmates, especially and vividly, because my class had the high casualty rate. They were all young men, close to me, and they were an emotional part of my then young life. And on this day and at this hour, I can remember each of them, and I can still see their faces. Since my generation's war, succeeding generations have fought other wars in Korea and Vietnam and Bosnia and Desert Storm and Somalia and all across the globe. And as we all know, we now have thousands of our young people engaged in a different kind of conflict, a different war in Iraq where more than 3,000 men and women, our very finest, have given their lives. So we memorialize today their gallantry, their patriotism, and their sacrifice. These sons and daughters of this place, itself born of revolution, and we do so with profound gratitude and abiding love. And as we gather here, deep within each one of us, I am sure, persists that constant question: why are so many of the best and brightest of each generation taken from us in these conflicts? Why do we engage in such costly and pervasive and now divisive wars that take so much from us materially and spiritually? Why? Well, in another time, in another war, University President Edward Kidder Graham speaking to the students about that war, put it this way: the faith for which the world is now being tested out in the crucible of fire is the faith that with the right to live freely, men will live rightly, that with free choice between inferior and superior, free men will choose the better way, and that knowledge and power to choose rightly comes from within. The issue of freedom, he said, is the only issue. And President Edward Kidder Graham defined that quality of patriotism and gallantry by telling of alumnus Isaac Avery, who led his brigade across that open field of withering gunfire, and when struck down lived long enough to write on an envelope crimsoned with his own blood, "Tell my father I died with my face to the foe." At another time, this same Dr. Graham said something that all Americans should heed. "We are entrusted," he said, "not merely in making the world safe for democracy, but in making a democracy worthy of their sacrifice." These are not empty phrases, he said. You cut them and they bleed with the lives of men and women and children. So on this beautiful April day, we give thanks and we give praise to those who, like us, as the Chancellor said, once walked these paths enjoying the springtime, and then they gave their lives. They made that sacrifice Dr. Graham spoke about, and they did so in defense of our freedom to live here and to be responsible, patriotic citizens and public servants. So what about you and me? What are we doing to make our democracy worthy of the sacrifice of those 787 noble spirits we celebrate today? How would each of us answer that question today? Are we moving more toward peace, not only among nations, but among citizens at home? Are we vigilant in securing freedom of speech and worship and the press and inquiry and public security in our own homes and freedom of want among our own people? Just how sensitive are you and I to the human suffering in Darfur and to the oppression in the global community in which we now live? And what are you and I doing to return to civility, the public life we enjoy, and to restore the posture of our country as a compassionate and caring nation? Well, in our society, you and I, each one of us, is accountable and personally responsible through our own words and deeds and as our conscience dictates. But we know as a nation, and we all understand, and we believe that our democracy, even though sometimes uneven and sometimes messy, still represents the best hope of humankind at home and throughout the world. We believe in freedom and liberty, and we're willing to make the ultimate sacrifice to make that freedom and that liberty secure for all people. The 787 lives we memorialize brought you and brought me to this special moment of independence that we so cherish. Here and now, you and I can do no less than rededicate our own lives, our energy, and our strength to make very sure, that in our time, our generation will have done its part and done its very best to make this democracy worthy of the sacrifice of those we now honor. It is then with grateful hearts and abiding love and profound humility that we pause at this moment to dedicate the Carolina Alumni Memorial in memory of those lost in military service. May the Father of us all bless this place and the spirit of those who gave so much, indeed their greatest gift, that you and I may live abundantly and live free. Thank you.